Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Orit. How are you?
Good, thanks. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Looking forward to our conversation.
I know today we're going to talk about Trump. He is, I'm just happy he's back, not just because I'm in favor of him, but because he's like, he brings so much, like, entertainment to the media and to the world. Like, he's just, I think he's amazing. And not just entertainment as far as like, making jokes and stuff, but he knows how to deliver a message very simple. He's not political, so that's why people connect with him. He's like straightforward type of guy. He's like your next door neighbor who's gonna just talk to you like in your level. So it's kind of like I love that. I love that approach. I love it. It's simple. It delivers the message, and there's so much wisdom and business savvy, uh, years of experience of what he's saying. And he said it in such they're saying Einstein said, I don't know whoever said it, but said that if you cannot explain something to a 7 years old kid, you don't understand yourself. So he's that simple. That's what I mean. He's very complex, but I mean, as far as like, delivering a message. That's why I think he's like a great entertainer. He's a great message deliverer. And let's go to his like, his recent his recent messages.
So,
I mean, he said few things and then you'll just talk about it. He talked
okay.
about changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. He was talking about buying Greenland, and then he's talking about taking over Panama Canal again. It's a lot. It's a lot. And he was also saying something about Israel, but maybe we'll mention it in the end. But go ahead, Daniel.
My thinking about Trump, look, American politicians everywhere, you are right that they will talk in very highfalutin terms. They will discuss things. They will sit around tables. But when it boils down to it, it's always about money.
Yes.
And Trump is, yeah, I'm about money. And he's right there. He doesn't say anything else. He says, I'm looking at America first. Now, the problem I have with that is that the more technologically advanced we have become over the centuries, the more the world has shrunk. And to keep on talking about national borders as if the financial system were just war by another means, that you had to have a deal that was to your advantage and not to everyone's advantage, to me is backward. But this is the world we live in.
Yeah.
And he is definitely saying in this last week, the last few conversations that he's had, is that he's going to put American security and American financial security uppermost in his mind right the way down the line. And that does have huge implications. And it's not just the implications that he's saying he wants to take over Greenland, which is a semi-autonomous individual state. I mean, it's owned by Denmark and has been run by Denmark for 600 years. It
Yeah.
it has its own population, its own way of doing things. You don't just go in and say, "Oh, can I buy Scotland, please?"
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but
and,
it's
and
not
it,
something new. It's something that has been, in the mind
yeah,
of
yeah,
the
yeah,
Americans for more than 150 years.
yeah.
But it's just it's always you always take it more seriously when he says it because he usually delivers.
He
So
will deliver. Yeah, he will try. But
yeah,
what we're seeing at the moment with the Democrats is they're trying to tie up the administration in a legalese and legal frameworks before it even gets into power. So
yeah,
I know the laws in America get very convoluted and go on and on and on. So to try and buy Greenland, I mean, it'll take years. It will take more than 4 years that he's got in order to even begin to get a contract together to say that they could buy it. I mean, they bought the Arctic, didn't they, from the Russians
yeah.
150 years ago, whenever it was. Um, though, and that was between a king and a politician, so that was much easier. This is between independent democratic governments. It's going to take forever. What he's much better at doing is expanding the military base there so
Yeah.
that he's
Oh,
got
okay. So point,
security.
they mentioned that there is I think one of the largest, I don't know, but a very big American army base in Greenland, right? And the reasons that are standing behind, like you said, this move or at least attempt is both financial, strategical, like financial goals um, and military,
Hmm.
geographically. It's
Yeah,
right in the middle of, first of all, it's the biggest, the largest island, I think there is.
yeah,
And it's beside the fact that it has a lot of minerals, it's kind of like an untouched island that has a lot of resource, natural resource. The US itself has as well a lot of, oils and gas, but it's better to have more. And it also have resources that China is the main provider nowadays. And I think that's one of the main reasons that he wants it. Um, so he would, like if you take Trump, China for him, and for many obvious and valid reasons, is the one that he needs to move away and try to get as much control because China is taking over the world in many, many, many like small steps, but they're securing themselves. And how do they do that? They, even in Israel, for example, they're the one who built the underground. That for me, that's outrageous, right? But I mean, why would you give Chinese? Like, I mean, it's obviously it's gonna have like a lot of like, that's just me in my mind, maybe. But it's
no,
like
no,
I
no,
don't think
it's
you
not you,
should. I
Ori.
don't think someone else out of your country should have the blueprint of your, underground. Let's just put it
So
that one.
the international engineering firms, I mean, there are only a few, and they work all over the world, and it
Exactly.
makes sense that you get the best that you can. As to the blueprints, yes, I do agree with you. There was this lovely story that the Chinese invested quite heavily in Africa and still
That
doing
was
so.
my next thing. They own
And
Africa. They basically own Africa.
well, they do because of the minerals and the resources. It's a resource-rich continent.
Yeah,
But
no,
they
but they own
built,
Africa because of what you're about to say. I'm sorry that I'm interrupting what you said, but that was my next, like, my next thing to say that they own Africa because they build their roads there,
mm,
and a lot of African countries can't pay them. So what they do is they secure their payment by basically owning the country. It's like,
mm,
natural resources. And the interest that they have to pay for it is insane. I'm not even talking about the job that they're doing, which is a shitty job. Because like the next day, like the next year, you see fractions on the roads.
mm.
I'm sorry I said shitty, but it's not a,
And that's
you
all
know what I
right.
mean. They do a very bad job. And at least the ones that I know in Ethiopia,
Mm,
so
mm,
it's kind of like, and then what happens is that because they do a bad job, then they have to go and do it again. It's not like you have a guarantee on like, it's natural, the natural, they call it, let's say the natural elements, that I've done that. So you have to also pay for the for the fixing. So those countries are going into such huge debts to
mm.
China, and China owns a lot in that way. China owns a lot of countries in Africa, and it's the same thing in other countries. I mean, they have very cheap labor, and they do have smart, they invested in technology. They invested in making themselves like very technological, and they succeeded because everything America is doing, they're doing faster, and maybe not to the same degree, but you know what, it's accessible to everybody now because of that.
So
So what I'm trying to say is Trump is trying to move them away, as much as he can and take control of whatever he can, which is smart because this way you make sure and not even forget that the US owns China like billions and billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah, yeah.
So
They do.
yeah.
The the way in which international finance works, though, it works the same with every country. I don't know if you know, but after the First World War, Germany had to pay huge reparations and had no money.
Mm.
So it borrowed its money from America. So the Americans lent them billions. They paid the reparations to the French and the British paid the money back to America in order to pay back for all the armaments and everything that they had had from them in order to propagate the First World War. So the money just did a circle. That's all it did. And
Yeah.
that's all money ever does. What we face at the moment is that in the last 30 years, but certainly tracking the last 70, China has modernized
Yes.
and China is becoming powerful
Yes.
and financially powerful,
Yes.
and America doesn't like it. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Now you could say, well, they have a different philosophy, and so their political stance is going to be one that is against the West. And I think you have a right to say that. I think you have a right to discuss exactly how the Communist Party acts with its own people. It is
Mhm.
not a
Oh wow.
liberal government at all, and it doesn't extend liberality to the world.
It's
But
horrible.
I don't think you can criticize them on terms of capitalism because they're just doing what every capitalist country does.
Yeah.
England, why did England have an empire? What were we doing in Africa? We were taking everything we could get,
Yeah.
and that's what countries do.
Yeah.
I think what Trump is doing is quite interesting in terms of he's absolutely upfront. He doesn't mince his words,
Yeah.
and that's making people very frightened
Yeah.
because the way in which things get done generally over the last 50 years is we all talk about it and we come to some sort of agreement and we sign contracts and treaties and so forth. He's not really interested in that. A deal is a deal to him and he'll do it with anybody. And he wants to make sure, as we said at the beginning of this, of the security of America, both in terms of its military stance
Yeah.
and in terms of its financial stance. And he will take on all comers.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. So that about Greenland, but what about Panama Canal?
So, as far as I can see, he's angry because he says that obviously shipping goes through Panama Canal, and the Americans did own it until I think it was President Carter who gave it
Yeah.
back to Panama to organize in the 70s. But every ship that goes through has to pay a toll,
Yeah.
and he's angry that he thinks that the tolls being paid by the Chinese are less than those being paid by the
What
Americans.
there are about according I think I don't remember who said it, but they're saying that there are two Chinese contractor that operate two of the ports. So he thinks that first of all that China is taking over and
Yeah.
he is the one actually like benefiting from it. And he's saying like we're the one who created it, so why would the Chinese benefit from it? Uh, but
So
yeah,
you have to ask yourself why the Panamanians allowed China to become the authority. I mean, there must have, if there wasn't a bidding process to run these ports, then it must have been corrupt. There must have been money passed from one hand to another
the
in order
Chinese
to.
know how to win bids. They're good at it. It's not that.
Yeah.
It's not because again, because they have cheap labor. They have cheap labor, and you can't really, you can beat
So
them.
what Trump is seeing then is he's seeing financial power from China in America's backyard.
Yep.
That is now Latin America has always scared the Americans. They have done more in Latin America to interfere with the political system and to support dictators than they ever did against the Arab nations. I remember many years ago talking to a Colombian after 9/11, and I said that I don't understand quite what's going on. The Arab nations have made billions out of oil, and they have modernized themselves, and they are richer than they've ever been. The people who were really suffering because of American interference were the Latin Americans. People were being starved, killed, butchered, and imprisoned. But they never did this. They never attacked like this. What's going on? And this Colombian guy said to me, same religion. That's all he said. That's all he said. And I was
Right.
I and I said, really? That's as banal as it gets. He said, yeah, they're all Christians, so they're having a go at each other. Same religion. They will take it. And I have never quite been able to put that all together in my head that people who talk about liberal democracy and freedoms can do that to each other. But this is what some people think. I don't think the Americans will want a single Chinese company anywhere in Latin America doing anything.
But yeah, but they already do. But yeah, you're right.
But they already do. And
Yeah.
so he's coming in and saying, well, that's a threat.
Yeah. And I think that one he might actually fulfill some way. But we'll see. We'll
Yeah,
see.
I'm sure it is a threat in a certain instance. They are not Americans; they are Chinese,
Yeah.
and they have their nationalism, and the Americans have their nationalism. It's always this abrasive nature of instinctive nationality that comes up against money, and then you have this horrible mix of people wanting to make sure that the other person doesn't get advantage.
Yeah.
Um,
It's the
it's the cause
presence.
of
Yeah,
it's
it's
the
the
cause of
presence.
war.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is a
yeah,
Cold War. And today you're like if today the empire, and I think I guess like in history, empire is measured by two things, by its financial power and by its military presence. So if the Chinese have presence, I'm not talking about military presence, but actual presence, like building and structuring and doing whatever they do, almost everywhere in the world. I'm telling you, even in Israel, like which is like why again, I don't but whatever. Then they are so far winning.
yeah. America exported its philosophy through investment, and that is exactly what China is trying to do today.
Yeah.
I do not like some of the Chinese philosophy of how they treat people,
Oh yeah.
but I can see that they are doing exactly what people do. Many years ago, when I was talking about this to friends, I said, given the history of the human race, if you looked at it in full, the Chinese had a real chance as they became richer and richer and richer and more powerful, not to make the mistakes of all other countries when they became powerful and built empires. And they are making every
Every
single
mistake.
mistake. Every single one.
Yeah.
And they are not stupid. They've read the history,
Um,
but they're human beings. They're doing what human beings do. They want to get back at the fact that for 100 years they were tortured by Western and Japanese powers. They are still angry. There is no doubt that they're still angry at
I
that.
mean, Chinese are as ancient as like, almost as the
Yeah,
Jews,
of course.
It's like, I mean,
But
China been around for thousands of years.
yeah, yeah, but they
So,
lost power because they had emperors who came in and forbade them to do any research, forbade them to go where their scientists wanted them to go. The Chinese in the 1100s had ships putting out to sea in fleets to explore the world. Yeah, and it was all stopped. And all those wonderful things that the Chinese were finding 2,000 years ago all stopped. Why? Because they gave in to an emperor. They wanted the king. They kowtowed to the king, and he didn't want to lose his power base.
yeah,
And his power base was making sure people remained ignorant.
yeah, yeah.
We're right, we're right back where we normally end up, aren't we?
But you know what amazing? Yeah, what amazing is today, people are still like, deciding to be ignorant. Now, I'm not
Yeah,
saying you
yeah.
should learn, you should study everything or whatever, but if you have
I
everything open to you, like most of the
no,
country, yeah,
I think
then you should,
the one study, I think it was Alexander Pope, the proper study of man is man. The one study we should all have is to understand ourselves as human beings.
yeah,
And you can point a finger and you can say, aren't they horrible? They're doing terrible things. They're doing terrible things in their own name, but they're just acting the same way as all empires act. They're human beings.
yeah,
And the only way that we have found in order to stop this cycle that is quite ludicrous in its way is to talk and sit down and discuss. Because the only other option is to fight it out in either political spheres or military spheres or financial spheres. And that always brings a cost. There's always a human cost to that.
mm,
I think that Trump is, I mean, I don't agree with you about Trump being entertaining. I think you can get carried away with entertainment. I think he is a dangerous thinker because he's simplistic. It's a breath of fresh air for people who have to deal with our politicians that he actually says something you can understand
yeah,
straight away, and you don't have to look at someone's explanation of what's just been said in order
yeah,
to understand what's going to happen. But his simplicity is dangerous. We don't actually live in a simple world. Human beings are not the simplest of creatures. There is a give and take, which is quite complex in almost every human interaction. And you have to learn those and you have to learn how to handle those. I could not sit down and come to any agreement with someone who's extremely right wing.
mhm,
I couldn't do it. There's nowhere where we would meet in a discussion that would come to some sort of conclusion that we could live in peace together because someone who's extremely right wing is likely to be very anti-Semitic. When I was discussing this years ago, I said the first realization I had about being Jewish in this world was that when I was born, there were hundreds of millions of people in this world who would have picked me up by my legs and smashed my head against a stone and thought that they were doing a good thing. That's the reality of realization of where some people's thinking is. Where do you go with people like that? You can talk and talk and talk, but you're never going to come to any kind of rational ground where you meet. Just
yeah,
doesn't exist.
yeah.
And what I worry about with Trump is his simplicity, is he thinks that there's no place of meeting with the Chinese.
Oh
There's
no,
no,
I think that's where I think that as I said, like I give that example of the saying, if you can't explain to a 7 years old, then you don't understand yourself. So I think he has a lot of experience and complexity in his like thinking and what he brings to the table that would allow it to be so simple. Not everybody can make things simple, and that's his talent. That's exactly it. And if anyone can bring anything with China is him. Uh, a good deal with China, not like what they have now, where they were, it's just doesn't make any sense. But I think I mean he's proven it. He's a great deal maker. I just hope he's going to be supporting Israel like he has and like he said. And for me, that's all like mostly what matters. Um, and I was happy about Trump being elected because the US as the empire of the West world is is a first stone. It's like I'm hoping that the other countries will also, get that will experience the same realization and might, you know, go back to normal and that because we're living in an extreme time today. Like,
mm, mm.
right? In the UK, in Europe, everywhere is extreme in the US. And that's the reason that actually a person like Trump's get elected, because you get the other extreme as well. Even though, again, he's the right person, the right time, in my opinion. But
I
let's go back. Huh?
I don't disagree with you. Um, but when I saw what Trump was saying, I actually felt that my place was not that he was good for Israel, which I think he is, but that he's an American president talking
Yeah,
to the American people,
yeah,
and it's for the American people to decide whether he's good for them.
yeah, of course.
They have decided, and it's come out the way it has. I actually wish they hadn't decided that way, but
Yeah,
they did.
Camilla. That's who you
Oh,
wish.
I don't think she was worth anything.
Oh,
But
okay.
I never have thought that I mean, American president, people who get to the top. I run a magazine, and Derek Guthrie used to talk about this. He knew that Obama would not get anywhere. He would not fulfill his promise. And the reason he knew it is because he said he was hamstrung by the fact that he was part and parcel of the Chicago political machine. So all these people who come up and run to be president, they're all bought and sold
Yeah,
before they ever get anywhere
yeah,
by the political machine that's funding them.
yeah, of
Um,
course.
what can you do
And
about that?
that's why Trump can say whatever he wants and do whatever he wants, because he's like self-fund. But
He has, yes, but he does have paymasters. He was in
oh,
deep financial trouble and he wants to get out of it. And the more money he can make, the better. Yeah. So, but
anyways, let's talk. No, but you
let's talk. Yeah, carry on.
about like what you were saying about Canada.
This is, I was really surprised when I found out that Trudeau had taken away the charitable status of the Israel National Fund. I mean, the Israel National Fund is only planting trees and paying for hospital places and things like this. He was obviously kowtowing to some sort of Muslim minority in Canada and obviously kowtowing to the financial might of the Arab nations in their dealings with Canada in some way. Either that, or he just doesn't like Israel. I mean, I don't know which it is. So we're not actually sad he's gone. I can't say I know a great deal about what he's done in Canada for 9 years, but his liberal thinking is more attuned to mine than not. But he obviously
I
couldn't
think he
bring it together.
destroyed Canada.
You do, yeah.
I think so, yeah. Canada was a successful country. She was very kind of like accepting, growing, always wanting others to, educated people to come to their country to make it, more to bettering it. And she had something to offer. They have good social services, and they have better social services than in the US. They're more like Europeans in that sense. Um, and his liberalism has like it's have you seen that Avi, there's a competition. I think it was in Canada. I'm pretty sure it was weightlifting competition for women,
Hmm. Hmm.
and men were saying that they're like women or transgender or whatever, and they're participating in those, in those um, competitions. And one of the trainers of the team signed up as a woman, and he went there dressed up like a man. And of course, he won the competition. And people were starting to say, and the first person who complained about it was a transgender that won the previous the previous championship. So he won him, I guess. I guess maybe he weighed more or something, took more weight. So that's ludicrous. And what he did it to prove a point. He did it to prove a
Mm,
point, saying that, my my girls working hard to compete in a girls competition and a women competition, not in pretended woman competition. And not just that, but you see the deterioration in Canada. You see a lot of attacks and things that are happening in there that are just destroying the core of democracy in Canada. And I think that's what he did in his leadership. Um, I think he was initially voted in because of his father, right? Was it a
mm,
father?
mm.
Yeah. But not because he had anything to offer. And as the world goes, extreme Canada as well. And it's just sad because Canada do have a lot to offer, I think. Um,
Uh, I've
and
only visited once. I don't really claim to
what?
know the country at all. Um, but I think that in general, liberal politicians have a fight on their hands at this juncture in the century. That they have a lot of people pulling against their values within their own countries.
Yes.
So it's not a question of, oh, they do it differently over there. It's a question of people actually coming forward and saying, you will do it our way, and we don't want to do it your way. And that has elicited a response from the indigenous population, which is this, you could have predicted it happening, an extreme right-wing shift
Mm.
that they want to deal with their values as having primacy over anybody else's. And they don't want people coming in from other countries and saying, no, we're not signing up to the way you do things here.
Mm.
They think that is completely wrong. That is the bad way to handle immigration. I actually agree. It is a bad way to handle immigration.
Mm.
You want people to come into a country who at least share your value system.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't share your value system, you've got a hot cake right there. It's going to explode in your face. So liberals don't quite, like Trudeau, don't quite know how to handle
Mhm.
that tension. They get it wrong every time. They get it wrong over here in England.
Mm.
Uh,
No.
they think they're
Let's not start talking about England like that's oh,
okay.
it's
Okay,
so
okay.
sad, such a sad story.
But Canada's a very big country. It's got wonderful resources. It's got an
Yeah.
interesting people. It's part of North America.
Yes.
It's not as powerful militarily
No.
as the USA, but I don't think it ever wanted to be.
Yeah.
Um, but it's got a massive coastline. It's got the Pacific and the Atlantic. It's got an intelligent, highly educated people. Um, so I don't quite know what's going to happen if they do shift to the right.
I
Then
saw
you will have
the new there's this I don't know what's his name, but he's great. The like from the I think he's the head of the opposition. He is such I hope he's going to get elected because he's going to do remarkable things for Canada. At least it seems like it. So let's hope there is hope. There is hope. Let's see.
Well, I mean, if it goes right wing, then you've got people of like mind in Washington and in Canada, so
Yeah.
they will get on. Yeah, they
Mhm.
will do things together, and I'm sure Trump will love that because that helps him with any problems he has with China.
Yeah.
Um, and if he has a close ally, well, Canada's always been a close ally. They haven't
Yes.
invaded America for a couple of
Yeah.
hundred years.
They always consider it like the 51 state.
They are, but they're also part of the Commonwealth still.
Mm.
So they're still attached to England. But then,
Yeah.
it's very funny when you listen to Americans talking how many Americans are attached to England. They come back and they find, I mean, Elon Musk has an English ancestor.
Mm.
So, the ties are very close between Western English speaking countries.
Yes.
And those ties, I mean, Churchill, go back to Churchill, he said those ties were the guarantee of peace and the guarantee of order in the whole world. And to a certain extent, they still are. And this is why there's more tension as China comes up, because China is not an English speaking country. So I don't know if you ever want to talk about it because I think it's actually more philosophical than political, but the way in which you can be instructed of how people think with their looking at their language is
Mm.
very interesting. And China does not think the way English speaking peoples think.
Oh no, they don't. It's totally
Yeah.
different. All right, Danielle. Thank you for
It's done.
the
Okay.
conversation.
Lovely talking to you as ever,
Yeah,
Ori. You have a good week.
thanks.
I'm sure we'll have a chat before then, but look after yourself and my love to everybody.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye bye for now.
Bye.